Welcome, everyone. We are so excited you are here with us. And we welcome you to our April New Educator in-service piece. We are here as Tracy and I come representing the Council for Exceptional Children. We are so excited to also recognize the other board members that will be coming on our slide next. And I just can't thank enough for these people to be putting such amazing parts into this. Tracy, would you agree?
Oh, definitely. The resources are fantastic.
I think, Marcy, if we go to that next slide, they'll be able to see some wonderful people that are a part of the Executive Board of Directors. Our President, Amy Hobbs, and Dr. Tara Reinhardt, President and President-elect, are not able to be with us tonight, and they do send their sincere apologies. I believe everyone on that list, including Dr. John Summers, Cheryl Brimmer, those folks that you can see are all so behind you as beginning teachers in your first or second year, and even our pre-service teachers that are joining us tonight. We again welcome you, and I think, Tracy, would you agree that our smiling faces are just one of many who are behind you becoming the best educators in the area of special education we can become?
Yes, for sure. And they all wanted to be here, and unfortunately, due to other commitments, they weren't able to attend, but they sent good wishes to everybody, and just wanted everybody to know that you can reach out to any of us on the board with questions or concerns, or if you just need somebody to be a cheerleader for you, we are here.
We do appreciate you saying that, Tracy. And the funny part about it is those folks are all running school districts and helping us be able to do our jobs as educators tomorrow morning. So we just appreciate them doing their job, and we'll come along and help along our time. So one of the other folks that we love to thank when we do our in-service piece with the beginning teachers is what Marcy's going to show us on that next slide. It has really been exciting to be kind of working and partnering, Tracy, if you agree, with that Indiana Department of Ed. So we are so grateful for their involvement, and just kind of give you a little tidbit. We are one of only 2 states really offering this when we combine ourselves with the state of Indiana. So their support of giving you some of your resources, including your books that we received at the start of the year, and now into our second year, inviting that second year folks. Tracy, I can't think we can thank everyone enough from that Department of Education, and again, the Indiana Council for Exceptional Children partnership with them.
I agree. And I think it's fantastic that they are kind of down here in the trenches with us, even though they're at the state level. They're still giving us great insight and input, and being there for us when we have questions. And oftentimes, with government, you don't get that. You don't have that access. So it's fantastic.
Tracy, I don't think I could have said it better. I just feel there's this partnership. They really try to understand and support us who are in that educational field. So we can be excited to be in Indiana doing our first year and second year of teaching as we head into understanding and getting that full set of supports that we know. Well, there's another great set of people, Tracy, that are on that next slide. I know Marcy introduced us, but here are some of the great people from the Indiana IEP Resource Center. Again, talk about a partnership with Indiana Council for Exceptional Children. We cannot thank them enough. If you have not yet kind of looked at their website, the Indiana IEP Resource Center is nothing but resources for us veteran teachers as well as our first and second year teachers. Tracy, I know you use it a lot as well.
I do. And actually, I was in it yesterday because I had a question about an IEP goal. And so they have some fantastic resources, and just the professional development that you can get that's free. And it's kind of quick, those short, here's some information. It's not too much information, but you can take it back to the classroom and use it that day. And that's what I love about it.
Well, and Tracy, their consultants are so supportive in helping us, if we do have a little more detailed question, to dig in there and help. The IEP Resource Center, and our own Marcy on tonight is in the orange in that back row. So we just want to thank you so much again for letting us partner and be able to give this to our beginning teachers. But again, the Indiana IEP resource is for all of us who are in this area, and parents included. So I know Marcy put in the chat, Tracy, there's some trainings coming up, and that she was kind enough to kind of let us know a little bit about the catalog training. So you guys check out the chat. Marcy will be we'll be adding lots of resources in that chat today. We do again appreciate their support. I want to make sure that we all on this screen understand this is really rare. A state of Indiana and the IEP Resource Center doesn't usually come together with Indiana Council for Exceptional Children. This doesn't happen in that kind of partnership. So we do not take this for granted. We are so grateful. And once again, Tracy, we're honored again to be here tonight to kind of support another wonderful speaker. So before we do that, we've got some other slides to talk about.
Okay.
Oh, I love this one.
I know. I saw it earlier and just thought, oh, I've got several pictures that I could be adding really fast. So one image or phrase that represents your feelings about the school year so far. And I know right now, you see these images. I know up in Elkhart, they've gone back to being in school 4 days a week from only being in it from 2. And so in the chat box, find some pictures, some memes, put it in there, and let us know how things are going for you.
We get to watch those chat words come in.
I can't wait. I know. I can't wait. If you can't find a picture that's working or get it to, like, sometimes technology and me, it is not fantastic, but just a phrase. And we're all here with you. I'm, a special ed teacher. So I was, doing all kinds of things today. And so I know, what it's like. And I talked to a first year teacher today that I'm mentoring, and, I asked her how it was going, and she just kind of paused, it just took a minute. So yeah, so definitely let us know how things are going.
And I don't know, Tracy, sometimes I've seen in the chat that the virtual and the technology can get difficult. It gets so overwhelming or frustrating. And I think we feel that as educators. We're used to being in front of those kids. And when I see some of your words on there, nervous, am I doing it incorrectly? Mm-hmm. Even the veteran teachers on this screen are feeling that way. So I really think that we can continue to work together and remind ourselves that this is part of the learning we get to take on, and not to be too hard on ourselves. That picture, did you see, Tracy, that picture of the one woman, I believe, or the person in the white? They're by their computer with their head down, like rest. We've got to make some time for rest. We're going to have to. The images that's on our screen remind us that we're tired. The tired word comes to my mind. I'm looking again a little bit more onto the chat. Someone mentioned they like the kitty. They like holding the cats. Kids are liking to hold cats. Yeah, we're having all kinds of people.
Oh, I'm glad that you can see it. My chat is not refreshing very quickly.
There's one person, Tracy, they said they're working at a residential site, and we're offering direct instructions since October 17th. The flexibility, patience, growing personally and professionally every single day. Oh, I'm a little pug, exhausted and pressing forward. Oh, yeah. Joshua mentioned one step at a time. Oh, Dolly, first year, I feel I'm kind of beginning baptism by fire. Yes. Even the veterans are saying this year might have even been a little bit of fire flowing every once in a while. So we love it.
I just want to say that I'm sure that all the participants want to see what everybody's saying as well. So notice, participants, that when you reply in the chat, you have a drop down that says all panelists or all panelists and attendees. We want to make sure that you are responding to everybody so that everyone can read what you're saying. So make sure it says all panelists and attendees prior to sending, and that'll help us out. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt,
Marcy.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
I'm so glad, Marcy. Good thinking on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One of the things, it's, a perfect storm for these first year and second year teachers, just starting with COVID and being new to the profession as a special ed teacher. So it's definitely going to take a lot of grace for ourselves as we finish out this school year.
Jennifer, we're going to work on making sure in our next couple experiences, we'll make sure everyone puts it to attendees and panelists. That will help. Thanks for bringing that to our attention. And I'm making sure that, making sure we do that. I love the word that someone put on here. I'm growing personally and professionally every single day. I want to celebrate that a little bit because that's something that we can do. We get to take control of what we can be grateful for at that end of the day. And I'm saying it better, but I'm also trying to do it every night, put something in a gratitude journal, just 3 or 4 things. Even if the sun came up and I got out of bed, then I think as educators, we can continue to try to move forward. Tracy, I don't know if you've kind of gone to some soul searching pieces to remind ourselves that we get to do this work and we get to support our students. And I know you do that on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that a veteran teacher told me the first year I started is to have a folder and just label it why I do this. And I have it in my desk. And over the last 6 years, now it's a hot mess because I just throw things in there. But, a card that a co-teacher has given me, or, a sticky note that my husband wrote me because he knew that I had, 5 IEPs to write. And all the little things that students give us, little sayings. If you're in the classroom and something happened, write it on a sticky note and put it in that folder, and then pull it out. On the days that you're exhausted and you're just not sure, like, man, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Pull that folder out and just spend 5 minutes going through it. And it is so awesome just to be able to remind ourselves, and it's visual. And it's almost kind of like a photo album. So it's fantastic. And when you're 5-6 years down the road and your folder is, massive, you have this great photo album of what you've been doing. And I apologize if you hear the puppy in the background. We were crazy and got a puppy. I'm not quite sure right now. I'm questioning it because she's in her terrible twos. So she wants in with me and is kind of barking over there. So I apologize. But one of the panelists has put, so glad, blessed, grateful. Why I do this folder on your desk. Yep. So definitely.
Thanks for thinking. Yes. Tracy, those are good things. I mean, and I think one thing I'm hoping today when we leave with hopefully some great strategies from our speaker tonight, in that just to feel a little energized. It's a long day and it's been a long heading into the evening. So relax tonight, enjoy yourself, and take on some of those pieces. I think the next slide is going to help us start getting our head around where we're heading later today. Mm-hmm. So tonight's topic on teaching behavior, these are some wonderful resources. So I don't know about you, Tracy, but sometimes that behavior piece becomes the hard part to manage. I do teach the behavior class at Butler University. So my Tuesday night class folks just literally kind of got this overload. So I just want to bless the books and say these are some amazing resources that we want to make sure that you see tonight, and know that they're available for you to look at, and note that they're such supportive pieces. Tracy, you may want to add something, but these books go with Dr. Scott's work, and I think you will find them to be especially those challenging behaviors, or some of our general ed special education combination working with our students. So acting out behaviors, and just highly recommend some of, if not all 5 of those books tonight. Tracy, anything you want to add on that tonight's topic?
Sorry, I have 2 of them, the Managing Classroom Behavior Using Positive Behavior Supports, and that Teaching Behavior down on the right-hand side. And I still use them as references. So if I'm doing an observation and I've taken my notes and I come back, and I'm using both of these books to go in and just remind myself of some of the little things that we can do in the classroom. And a lot of times it's hard because you're with that student all day long, day after day after day. And sometimes we're just like, oh, I don't know what else to do. I've tried everything. But taking a little bit of time and using the books as a resource, I even tabbed it with the blue one, Teaching Behavior, I have tabbed. So I can go straight to the sections and read a quick summary, just to refresh myself and my brain. And for new special ed teachers, it's good to have, a library of tools that you can go and get different ideas. So highly recommend starting your library.
Yeah. I do think someone mentioned that in the chat, Tracy, when you were chatting, but the teaching behavior one, as you all know, we have to teach it just like we're teaching the math and the science. So Dr. Scott will get into some of those pieces, but I do love the teaching behavior. If you're asking which one, that is to me the most supportive thing, because like you said, Tracy, there's so many ways to go in and rethink something for all different kids. So Renee's asking about sending the book titles and authors to this in the email. We'll let Marcy take a look at that. And also, if you go to Dr. Scott's website, he has, and these pictures are on there to support. So she's going to send them to us in an email. But just thank you for asking that. And Tracy, also, we kind of going into this next piece, thinking about the next slide, I want you to think about this. And if you wanted to even close your eyes, just don't go to sleep on us. Yep. The next slide is going to kind of get us into this teaching behavior piece. So, Tracy, what do we get to do tonight?
Yes, we get to look at when you hear the word behavior, what comes to your first thought? So put that in the chat, so that everybody else can see it. And so that way we can get a pretty good idea. So that all panelists and attendees, headache, yeah, we can tell what kind of day they might have had today.
Communication.
So trying to tell
us. So much trying to tell us what they're trying to think and say without words. Yeah, I love that. You guys are on the right track with that.
Oh, yeah. Kids not taking medication that might actually need to be taking it, redirection, help in all caps. I've been there. Yeah. So that's when having those resources, and I highly recommend getting some of those books and starting your library if you haven't. And then also, I have bookmarked the Indiana Resource Center site because they have really good information on there too to help support some of these behaviors.
Well, I think Marcy put down that they're getting started on their 21-22 training pieces too. So not do they just have, like you said, the website, but also get ready to plan your own personal plan of action for where you want to grow and the areas you want to grow. So I think we're going to be a good commercial, Tracy, for them. But
no, we're not getting paid. No.
Marcy gets to hear us say that, but we just have found as both educators how helpful they've been. Like they are that magic bullet, and we all know that's just us having others to be supportive us in thinking. So the IEP Resource Center link is something Marcy will put in the chat and support us in moving you forward. But if you haven't gone there and you're thinking about behavior, some of your words are so about some of the videos I've seen, Tracy. I think you were commenting on that as well.
And I think what's beneficial is a lot of the people that are doing those trainings have been in the classroom and they haven't been out of the classroom that long. And so, they get it. And it's language that we can use and that we, understand. And again, can take it back and use it. That's the type of professional development I like, that I can pick out one thing and go try it in the classroom and see how it works. So Marcy did put that link in the chat. So definitely bookmark it, go there, use it, contact them. They're fantastic.
Tracy, one thing I didn't want to forget. So the people we're partnering with, the IEP Resource Center, the Indiana CEC, the folks from the Department of Ed, they're going to be asking for some updated contact information as we head into the next school year. So please fill that out. And when you get something, and we'll be sending something to you pretty soon on your feedback in overall of these sessions. So I think it's really key that we want to keep giving you resources. So keep that in mind. Update your contact information as soon as they kind of ask for that feedback piece, please, because this kind of stuff will keep on going, and then we'll be able to give them even new trainings and support as we go forward. I think that this kind of leads us into some big pieces about high leverage practices. I think that might be our next slide that was part of the Council for Exceptional Children put into, you can see the slide on there, the important considerations for those social emotional behavior practices. We have found that these CEC high leverage practices are ones that are really positive and constructive feedback, being consistent, organized, respecting that learning environment, and, you know, teaching social behaviors. We've kind of talked about that a little bit with Dr. Scott's work. And keep in mind that this is another great CEC high leverage practices resource. And the website that you can reach it is at the bottom of your screen, if you can see that. I really, really want you to take a good look at those, conducting those functional behavior assessments, you know, individual behavior support systems. This helps us take care of a lot of best practices. And if you need more, please go to that website, because the behavior supports is kind of what I believe we get from the IEP Resource Center, but that's kind of what CEC, that Council for Exceptional Children, does, is to support and move us where we can get even more resources for those tough to handle kids or those students that have some pretty needy social emotional behavior practice needs.
Mm-hmm. And I think the section in IIEP where we're writing those behavior plans can be a little intimidating. When you're looking at all of the boxes and you're like, what am I supposed to put here? And what do we really need to be analyzing and getting it down? So the high leverage practice will help with that.
I just want to say that we just heard that from our Indiana Council for Exceptional Teacher of the Year, Tracy Penn, right in front of us. So I'm just saying, if she's using it, I want to use it. But yes. Tracy, we're just going to give that little plug of a congratulations. Thank you again for all the work you do with kids, if high leverage practices, as well as coming tonight after you ran from definitely a full day with students and your own family needs. So we always appreciate real life and great educators. So yes, thank you, Jennifer. We're so proud of Tracy, and for her to take time to be on our board as an active educator in the trenches, as she says. So thank you. I think that's wonderful of that. Well, we're heading to talking too much, Tracy. I know that's hard for you and I to believe.
I know. Wait a minute. Yeah.
We know that Dr. Scott is coming on soon, and we're happy for you to kind of keep these conversations going. So no questions ever dumb, and that's what this is all about. So please put your thoughts and questions in the chat. We'll be monitoring those, and as Dr. Scott moves along, we'll see and how he'll handle those individually or at the end. But I just want to make sure that we hear a little bit about who's coming before he starts speaking here at 7 to us. So Marcy, any more that you need from our slides here, or can we pass the baton? Oh gosh, thank you. So New Educator Institute benefits. So this is the website for getting, virtual network sessions. So 6:30 to 7, that we have December 1st. We have that February 10th, April 14th, and June 23rd. So those are dates that we want to make sure are heading into that last one, June 23rd, as we move forward. So those are the last type of new for this school year that we will be having time together. And again, 6:30 to 7, we'll start the virtual networking session, something like this. Again, chatting a little bit more with interaction and time to get together. And then we will celebrate for our end of the year time with our June 23rd last meeting.
We'll definitely celebrate at that meeting, because you know they're going to complete the first year, the second year, and still standing. So
I know, Tracy, I just am so proud of our beginning teachers. I think my heart is more there than sometimes than any place else, because these are those foundational years, and we just want to hope that you are feeling the celebration from all of us as we just celebrate with you today. I am looking at any other questions or chat before we get started.
There's a question on the website for getting info lesson plans from experienced teachers that was mentioned during the last webinar. That I'm not sure. I'll have to check with Tara to see. And let me see if I can get it. I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, and Marcy also will have that, Tracy too, to support us on that, just to
and I'm not exactly sure what that is, but if I can't find it, then I can get with Susan Hintz as well and get that. And I know that people had asked if her recording was going to be available. We are working with her on that. Excuse us, we have a friend. We are working with her on that. And once I have that available, I will email you the link to that recording as well. So everyone hopefully will have access to that sooner than later. But I will work on both those things for everyone. And someone said, not the last, I may have missed the last webinar. It was the one with a lot of legal info. That one we have recorded, so we can definitely find that information. So I will send you that link as well. It's on our website under www.indianaiprc.org/NEI, and all the recordings are available there. But I know that was fast, so I will email that information to you as well. All right.
Marcy, thank you for doing so much for us, and we'll pass the baton back to you.
Perfect. Well, sorry, I have one at soccer practice and one is with me tonight. That's why you got the little head popping in. So that's the reality of virtual, right? I just want to take a few minutes. Brandy, one more thing. What were the 2 books that were recommended? I will send you the list of all of the books, and Dr. Terrence Scott is on this evening, and he's going to be doing the presentation, and those books are his books, so I will also allow him to speak of them as well. But I will send you not only the titles, but also the links as well, so you can find those. So you'll get that following this event. All right, so we have Dr. Terrence Scott here, and I will say this is an old bio for him. So he is venturing on to a new journey in his career. But what I want to share about him is he has done so many presentations for us around behavior. So very practical, very take with you and use tomorrow. And that information will be available to you from all of his sessions on our website. So he is so kind and allows us to record his sessions and make them available to you. So any of the previous sessions that he's done for us are posted on our website, and you can have a chance to access those. So if you like what you hear today, which I'm sure you will, I will be sure to send you direct links to some of his other work that he's done for us as well. But I am actually going to let Dr. Terrence Scott start a little early tonight because he has so much good information. And all of you should have received a link to his handout for tonight via email earlier today. So if you did not, just shoot me a chat or shoot me an email, and I'll be happy to give that to you. So Dr. Terry Scott, I will go ahead and let you share your screen. So I will stop my share so that you can share your slides with us.
Right. Thank you, Marcy, and everyone else. I've really enjoyed listening for this last 30 minutes. I'm going to share my screen here. Again, thank you, Marcy, and thank you, everyone else. The topic of today's talk is teaching behavior. And what I'm going to be talking about does come from my book, Teaching Behavior, which is all just a series of pretty simple practices that teachers can do. They fall in under that heading of high leverage practice, of effective practice, of evidence-based practice, all of those kind of terms. And I'm going to describe to you a little bit more what that means as we get going. My background is I have an undergraduate degree in psychology, and I ended up working in residential treatment for a few years when I first got out of college. And after doing that for a few years, I decided to become a teacher because I liked working with those kind of kids. And I was alternative certified in special ed, and immediately found myself getting my first job working in a lockdown facility. So I was a teacher, but my classroom was a very small little room with very few adjudicated adolescent boys. And to this day, those first days in my classroom are the days I remember most of my career and the days where I learned the most in my career. I later went on, and after I got my Ph.D. in special education with an emphasis in behavior problems, I went back to teaching for a few years before I went into higher ed, just because I wanted to have more experience with more knowledge. And here's one of the main things that I've learned that I want to make sure I pass on to you. And that is, nothing is a sure thing. Everything we do is a probability. There's no single strategy that's going to work for every kid. There's no single strategy that's going to work every time you do it. All we've got are probabilities. But probability means some things work better than others, or some things give you a better chance than others. So while I can't say if you use this strategy, it will work for every kid every time, I can say if you don't know what else to do, this strategy gives you a better chance than anything else. Now, if it doesn't work, then the next thing I would do is look for what's the next best chance. And if you know a lot about a kid, then you might be able to say, well, because I know X, Y, and Z about this kid, now I can be more specific and say we should use this intervention. But in every one of those instances, what we're doing is picking and choosing the things that we think are most likely to work. Not the thing that's easiest, not the thing that's most familiar, not the thing that's newest or coolest, but just basic and simple. What's the best chance? So here's the way I'd like you to think about that while I'm speaking with you this evening. Pretend like I have all of your money. I've taken your retirement. I have your bank accounts. I've got your car, your pink slip. I've got every penny you own I've taken from you. That's the bad news. Here's the good news. I'm going to give you a chance to double it. So here's the bet. I've got a classroom here filled with middle school kids, and I've got a brand new teacher, much like many of you, who I am going to put in that classroom right now. And once he or she goes in there, I'm going to shut the door and lock it behind them, making them stay in there with these kids for a full week. Now, while they're in there with those kids for the next week, we're watching them. So pretend like you're in a sports book and you've just wagered everything you own, but you're not watching football, you're watching videos of a classroom. And here's the bet. If those kids that we're watching in that classroom with that new teacher are on task 80% of the time, and nobody needs to be removed from that classroom, then you've doubled everything you own in 1 week. Of course, if either of those things aren't the case, you've lost everything you own. So if the stakes were that high, I mean, this is almost life and death for you. If the stakes were that high, then this is the question. What would you want that teacher to be doing? Because clearly, some things make you more likely to win your bet than other things do. Now, there's nothing that I could say, if you had that teacher do this, you will absolutely win. I think there might be a few things that I could say, if that teacher does this, you'll almost certainly lose. But what we want to think about is, what should that teacher do all day? That teacher's stuck in there all day, every day for a week. So what should they be doing during transition? What kind of things should they do when they set the kids up to sit in different parts of the room? How about when they're delivering instruction? How about during independent work time? And you can think of all those times of the day. What are the probabilities? Well, that's what we're going to talk about for the next hour, are the basic probabilities for those things. And we're going to talk about those things that maximize those probabilities. So what I've spent my 20-some years in higher education doing is studying these things. Probability. What are the things that we know create the highest probability of kids' success? Now, I've been talking about generalities, the classroom, but realize everything we know that really works at a high probability is a generalization. We always know that there's going to be that one kid for whom these things are not going to work. And like I said earlier, in order to figure out what works best for that kid, we're going to need more information about that kid. Because if I know that kid has a learning disability, and or that kid has had a lot of trauma in their life, and or a whole lot of list of other things, it really helps me to start narrowing down what things might work best for that kid. Tonight, however, we're going to talk about the entire classroom. So when I first became a teacher, I was taught that you shouldn't even worry about teaching. Only do classroom management for the first week or two. And maybe even for people like me that were in a lockdown setting or an alternative setting, maybe someone would have said that should have gone on indefinitely until everybody was perfectly managed. Well, I can tell you, nobody's ever going to be always perfectly managed. It's kind of a ridiculous thing to think about. But along with that, I can also tell you, it's impossible to create a perfectly managed or even well-managed classroom without instruction. For one, what am I managing them for? I mean, the whole purpose of classroom management is to set kids up to be more successful and have less failures. But if we're not doing any teaching, then what's the point of having them be managed? They're not being more successful if they're not being asked to do anything. And I don't consider sitting still to be the outcome we're looking for. What we want are kids that are learning, kids that are behaving within the norms for engaging with one another and with adults in a positive way. But look at it even differently. The better job we do of teaching whatever we teach, whether it be how to be seated, how to raise your hand, how to take turns, or how to do math, how to read, how to do science, etc., the better job we do of teaching, the more successful kids will be. The more successful kids will be, the easier it is to implement classroom management. And the more easy it is to implement classroom management, the simpler it is for you to have good classroom management. And the simpler good classroom management becomes, the more effective your instruction becomes. And you can see what we're doing here is we've built a cycle. Instruction makes management work, management makes instruction work. And so if the purpose of classroom management is to facilitate safe learning environments and maximize success, then it has to start with instruction. So we're going to do both teaching and management at the same time. To think that we would do one or the other alone just doesn't make sense, especially not in terms of maximizing probabilities. So let's start with what we teach. We should begin by thinking about what we want kids to be able to know and do in order to be successful. So if you're teaching math or reading or science or social studies or health or any other academic content area, you'd have a set of rules or expectations, or you might even call this your set of standards. These are the things kids have to know to be successful. And you'd start out by thinking, what do they need to know first? And you would teach that. So let's look at that same logic for behavior. And again, let's make this be context or state dependent. What about during entry into the classroom and getting started? What about transition times? What about when I'm delivering instruction? What about cooperative groups? And you could go on and on to all those contexts. When we're doing any one of those things, what should you be doing if you're successful? So we want to teach kids explicitly. When these things are happening or under these conditions, you should be doing these things. And here's why. And that's a real important part. Here's why. Because this will make you more successful. Because this will make all of us be more respectful of one another. And there has to be a legitimate reason. And I can remember my teacher saying, because I said so. Well, for kids that aren't inclined to want to follow your rules in the first place, that just isn't going to work. They need to have a rationale. Next, think about using very authentic examples. Because if we do this, this will happen. If we don't do that, you might have seen these things happen, and we don't want that. So you want to make it real for them. And being explicit just simply means stating it right out and showing them right out. Don't make them guess. Now, rules are really what we teach. Routines and arrangements are things we do while we're teaching that make the teaching more likely to be effective. So I'm going to talk about all of these things for the rest of our hour. How do we build consistent schedules and procedures that make instruction more likely to work? How do we engage kids in such a way that it makes our instruction more likely to work? And remember, again, when I say instruction, I mean teaching behaviors and academics. How do we consider where we stand and where kids sit and how we arrange things in a way that makes it more likely we'll have success? How do we use active supervision in a way that isn't punishing, but that's more likely to make our instruction work? And how do we provide feedback? One last thing that I'll hit upon at the very end is, what about some of those kids that do things that are specifically problematic, and how might we address those? And so I'll touch upon a couple of those. So I'm going to start with a non-example. So I've been talking about we need to be explicit. And to be explicit, what you want to do is teach kids what to do. These are both non-examples. Now, the one on the right there, I don't know where this is or what it's all about. It's a random sign I found on the internet. And it's pretty ridiculous. It's telling you no crime, but for some reason, no crime between these hours, which assumingly means it is okay during other times. And yeah, that's pretty stupid. But look at the one on the left, which is the kind of sign I actually see in schools all the time. And it says, here are things not to do. Well, the problem here is multiple. One, there really are very, very few kids in your school that don't already know this. They know that hitting, kicking, and pushing are wrong. They might still do them, but they do them because they work. If somebody's bugging you and you do one of these three things, or all three of these things, they'll probably shut up. But what we want to teach instead of don't do this is, what should you be doing instead? And this is something we don't do a very good job of when we teach things like peer relations. Everybody knows not to hit, kick, and push. But what should you do if somebody's bothering you? That's the thing to teach. So what does it mean to respect others? And we can talk a lot about how to do that, but it needs to be contextual. So how do we respect others during discussion? How do we respect others during transition? And I think this one is really important and rarely taught. How do you respect others when they've said or done something disrespectful to you? Because a whole lot of kids, even though they know these three things are wrong, are going to do them because that's what they know. And our job is to teach something different. So what we want to do is we want to take those smaller behaviors and attach them to something bigger. The reason we want to do that is because we don't want to have 800 rules. Instead, what we want to do is have a few rules. So if you're familiar with the things that typically are done in PBIS, for instance, you'll notice in a lot of PBIS schools, they'll say, in our school, we are respectful and responsible and safe. Well, they're supposed to teach what those things mean. So for instance, if being safe means keeping myself learning and keeping myself healthy, I can now define that in a whole bunch of ways. So like being here on time is being safe. Getting your work done is being safe. Or I can say handling a conflict in this way is respectful, or doing this is responsible. So now we've got 3 rules. And all of those little rules are simply examples of the big ideas. Now, the idea of this is called anchored instruction. The idea is kids will remember more of those little rules when they have a schema. They know where to put them. They know why they're there and how they're connected. So we anchor little rules to big rules. Why should we listen? Because that's respectful, and respectful is one of our 3 rules. So it's easy to remember 3, and all the other ones will be much easier to remember if they have a rationale connecting them to one of the bigger ones. So when you create a list of rules in your classroom, don't just have a generic set, have the generic set from your school. Then by context and location, you can say, when we're at the sink, do this and this and this, because that helps be responsible and respectful in whatever your anchors are. be succinct with your rules. We don't want to write out any big, long things. They want to be just reminders for kids. It's the teaching that can be longer. You don't need to post what the consequences are, and you don't need a whole bunch of them. In fact, you should try by context or location to keep that number to 5 or less. Now, the next thing to consider is not all the things that we teach in school, and I'm sorry to have to say this, but I think you all will agree, not all the things we teach are really all that interesting to kids. A lot of the things we teach are in the standards, and we have to teach them, but we've got to figure out a way to engage kids with them. And on the first day of school, a lot of times talking about these rules is boring, and it's boring for me and for the kids. So we've got to figure out a way to bring them in with us. And we do that by doing something called providing an opportunity to respond, or what we sometimes shorten to OTR. Now, an opportunity to respond is simply the teacher providing the kids with a chance to do something related to the curriculum. And so obviously it can be as simple as, what do you think? And kids get to answer. Or thumbs up if you agree, or everybody raise your right hand if you think this is the right answer, or your left hand for this one, or repeat after me, or yell out what you think the answer is, or show me how you would do that. Turn and talk to your neighbor. All of those are OTRs because they all do the same thing. They create an opportunity for the student or students to do something during instruction that's related to the curriculum. Now, what we want is we want to see that kids get a lot of opportunities to respond during the boring parts. When you say all of you guys get in cooperative groups and build something, you don't need to do a bunch of this. Engagement's built in when you've got activities going on. But when you're trying to explain something complicated and it's taking a while and kids have a tough time keeping their attention, this is when you want to use your OTRs. What the research tells us is that when teachers, during instruction, give kids on average 3 opportunities to respond per minute, we get much higher rates of kid success, much higher rates of kid engagement, and this is important, significantly lower rates of disruptive behaviors. Even when we do these studies in the BD room, the rooms for just kids with behavior disorders, it has an even bigger effect with those kids. But the research we have says we get that effect on all kids. Now, again, this is not something you need to do all day long every day. But when you're delivering some content instruction that can sometimes be longer or more tedious, and you're trying to keep kids' attention, engagement is a critical piece. Now, I'm going to show you a video, and this is a real video, and this is a middle school teacher, and he's using what we would call choral responding. And a lot of times when you think of choral responding, you probably think of direct instruction lessons where teachers are snapping their fingers and the kids are answering, which is one tip of the iceberg example. But I want you to notice how this teacher is using these choral responses. So he's getting ready to start a new unit, and he's trying to describe to the students what's going to be in the unit and what they need to be thinking about. And it gets kind of tedious. But I want you to notice that all of the choral responses he asked for the students were chances for them to repeat back to him things that they were going to need to know. So one, he keeps them really engaged. In fact, I think he uses 10 OTRs in 1 minute, which is gigantic, and you would rarely do that. Again, we're looking at an average for 3. So take a look at how he does this.
I also want to share with you a couple of vocabulary words that are going to be in the story. Okay, so the first word is exhibit. What's the word? Great. An exhibit is a display. What is it? A display. In this case, we're talking about display like at a museum. So when you go to a museum, they have lots of what? Exhibits, displays where they show you things and you can walk around and see those. Great. The second word is disembark. What's the word? Disembark means to get off. What does it mean? And it means take it off like a boat, like in this example, these are shoulders, and they are, what are they doing? They are getting off or disembarking. What are they doing? They're disembarking. Here's another example of people getting off of a ferry. So they're what? They're disembarking from the ferry. That's right. In the text today, the girl and her family go to visit the Ellis Island Museum. They have to take a ferry to get there. When they arrive on Ellis Island, what do? They disembark from there. Okay, good.
So again, in 1 minute, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I guess 9 OTRs in 1 minute. And again, you wouldn't do this all the time. In fact, if you went and sat through a class where the teacher did this the entire time, it would be incredibly annoying. Kids would be trying to hurt themselves to get out of class. But we don't do this the whole period. We do this during times when there isn't something else that really grabs attention. So what we want is for the content to finally grab their attention. But while we're trying to get there, these are one of the tricks that we use. And let me just say one last thing about OTRs. The data that we have, the research that we have on OTRs shows that they work with adults as well as kids, with every type of kid, kids with disabilities, every age of kid, across the board. These aren't a special trick. In fact, I would argue OTRs are what we would call good instruction. So it's not like we're going to do instruction and then add on OTRs. We're going to engage kids with instruction. So I think of OTRs as just being a critical part of good instruction. Now, another reason for thinking about OTRs is OTRs provide opportunities for the teacher to say something positive to kids. Because what we like to see on average is adults saying positive things more often than they have to say, I'm sorry, that's wrong, or nope, or try again. When kids get it wrong, you do have to say, that's not right, I'm sorry, try again, whatever it is. The idea is to create more success than failure. And OTRs, because of the way they can be delivered in such a way that it's highly likely the students will be successful. And as you saw in this video, the teacher gave him the answer right before he asked for the answer. So it's a really high likelihood of success. That gives the teacher a real opportunity to say, wow, great job. So when we talk about reinforcement, which we need to talk about, and we will, this is all we're talking about. Acknowledge kids. Tell them they got it right. And I am a big proponent of reinforcement. I am a big proponent of PBIS. And honestly, I'm getting tired of hearing people say, I do PBIS because I give away a lot of points or a lot of things. That isn't PBIS, and that isn't necessary. Now, I'm not saying it shouldn't be done. And in fact, I'm not saying that there aren't times when it makes sense. But it shouldn't be our go-to or the thing we think about first. The first thing we should think about is, how do I make kids successful and say, good for you, you're successful. This is another one of those ridiculous signs I found on the internet, and I don't know where it's from or what it's about. But to me, this is all we're talking about when we talk about reinforcement during instruction. Wow, I noticed you. Good for you. And if you want to make it bigger, I'm going to tell your mom you did that well. But that's really all we need. What keeps kids going is the success, not the points. The points might be necessary sometimes to make kids keep going so that they find the success, but the success is what keeps it going. So I want to also, as we go through today, hit upon virtual things, because so much of what we do anymore is there. So I want you to think about this. During virtual instruction, enlist the parents' assistance with talking about the rules that the kids have at home and how they still matter in terms of respect and responsibility, etc. Make sure to teach specific rules for participation and what that means for their camera being on and on them, and their microphone being on and when to mute it. Those are all classroom rules that now just translate to home during virtual instruction. You can't post the rules in their house, so you're going to want to say them more often and review them more often. But it's just as, if not more, important this way that you praise students. Remember, every time you praise one student out loud, it's also a reminder to all the other students. So praising one student's great, but don't forget to praise everyone and do it all at once, because it's a lot more efficient when you do it that way. Moving on, let's talk a little bit about the schedule. Here's one thing we know really clearly. The more consistent your classroom runs on a daily basis, the better in terms of predicting kid success. The more you do the same things in the same way, in the same order on a daily basis, the better. Now, that doesn't mean that it needs to be identical every day. It might or it might not. It depends on your kids and your classroom. The classrooms where I taught during my teaching career, it did need to be like that. I had to say, we're doing this every day at 9:30 and we're doing this every day at 10:30, and I had to do it that way. My first classroom ever as a teacher, as I mentioned earlier, was 14 to 17-year-old adjudicated boys. And what I found is if I just made the schedule up every day, hey, it's 9 o'clock, why don't we do math? That was an argument that would go on for a long time every day. I think they thought because I was making it up that it was negotiable, when in my mind, it wasn't. So I learned this. When I made a schedule, wrote it on the board, and did it the same way every day, the negotiations went away. So I could say, hey, it's 9:40. That means it's time for math. And sure, my kids might go, oh, I don't want to. I go, yeah, no, I don't really want to either, but it's 9:40 and the schedule says math, so we really don't have a choice. And that sounds so ridiculous, but I would have big, mean 17-year-old kids say, damn that schedule, and pull out their books, which gave me an opportunity to say, yeah, I know, but thank you so much for pulling out your book. That's very responsible. Everything we do that sets kids up to be successful is an opportunity to give them the credit for it. And giving them the credit for it makes it more likely they'll do it again. We're just trying to create consistency by using consistency. Once you set that up, have expectations for everything on there. So there should never be a minute during the day when you have not taught a set of expectations. So think about it. When your kids first walk in the morning, do they have something to do? And oftentimes when I go and observe a classroom that's having problems, what I'll notice is that the kids come in and it's a horrible melee until the teacher says it's time for class to start. And what I always say to the teacher is, the expectations don't start when you say it's time for the class to start. The expectations should start when kids walk in the room. And you should teach them, when you walk in the room, these are the things you do. Go to your desk, get out your books, hang up your coat. When all that's done, talk quietly at your desk. And I just made up those. It can be whatever you want them to be. But at no point in your schedule should there be a place where kids think, hey, there are no expectations right now. Because if they believe that, they will test you on it. And you're all aware of that testing. One last thing to think about is the length and the sequencing of each activity. And this is just going back to kind of our betting idea. For any activity you're going to do, think about your kids in your classroom. How long will that work before it horribly doesn't work? How long will your kids sit there and read silently before it blows up? If you believe you can get 15 minutes, don't make silent reading go on for a half an hour because you're predicting a problem. Now, sometimes teachers have said to me, but I need to get an hour of this kind of instruction in. I say, great. Do whatever period you think they can handle, take a break, do something else, and then come back to it. Or during your hour of math, mix up activities. I'm doing the instruction part. Then we do cooperative groups. Then we do an activity. Then I do instruction. But make the schedule and the way you create it work for you. If you have a strict schedule that dictates things that aren't going to work, then your schedule is not working for you. Because we want kids to believe that this is consistent, anytime it changes, you've got to tell them ahead of time and tell them why. Virtually, I've really asked in the virtual instruction that we've done that the parents keep their kids on the schedule the same as it would be when they were in school. Because you know what happens is when you're in school, you go to bed at whatever time and you get up at whatever time and you have breakfast and you catch the bus or walk. But when we have virtual school, all those things start to fade away and it becomes problematic for kids throughout the day. So a great thing to consider is talking to parents about keeping the home schedule, even though kids aren't leaving and catching a bus and doing those things. Ask them to think about being really consistent with their schedule, and it'll help if you're consistent with what you do with your schedule. Now, it might be that you're only teaching virtually twice a week and the rest of the times is different, etc. Whatever it is, every time we're in that same context, we want to be as consistent as possible. And this is not something I have data for. It's something I believe, having done this a little bit, that I don't think the length of time that kids are able to sit and pay attention will be as long during virtual instruction as it is during in-person, which means you probably need to shorten your environment times. And two, I think it means you need to figure out ways to crank up the OTRs to keep kids engaged. But even with high levels of OTR, I think probably the activity intervals need to be shorter. Next, let's talk about the physical arrangement of the classroom. The first thing I like to think about with physical arrangement is my ability to see all of the kids all of the time. Now, when I say all of the kids all the time, that's really impossible. So I want to see as many of the kids as I can, as often as I can, is probably a more realistic way of saying it. How can I actually make contact with every kid? I can't all the time, but even if I'm stuck standing at the computer at the front of the room for minutes on end, my eyeballs can make contact with kids. So the first thing we want to think about when we think of active supervision is eye contact. And sometimes I've heard people say, they say to kids, we want you to be, you've got to be able to see my eyes. It's got to be more than that. It's got to be, you've got to be able to see my eyes seeing your eyes. If you're hiding behind something and can see my eyes, that doesn't count. I need to be able to know that you can see me and that you know I can see you. Now, this sounds really big brotherish, and to be honest, it is. And here's why. Because the more I make eye contact with kids, the less probability there will be for misbehavior. And every time I say that, I remember of kids in my life that I've known that probably were more likely to have a problem when I looked at them. But that's a single kid in a single classroom, not the generality. So as a generality, you want to put your money on more eye contact. Now, that doesn't mean I'm giving anybody the stink eye and staring them down. It just means as I teach, I'm keeping my head up and I'm looking around and looking right at kids. I'm talking to them. Not just out to the class at large, but actually to kids. Other part of this is moving around. Moving around is a great thing, and we've known this for years and years, that the more the teacher moves about the room during instruction, the more engaged and on task the kids will be, the fewer misbehaviors you'll have. But when you move around the room, it actually makes it harder to have eye contact with everybody. You've got to keep your head on a swivel. And I like to think about it like this. And let me just step back a second and say, I realize that I come at this with a much higher level of paranoia than you probably need. And that's because of the kids that I worked with during the years that I was a classroom teacher, that I needed to have this level of these things to make it work. You don't probably need to say every kid needs to be able to see my eyes within 1 second. But the 1 second rule to me meant every kid believes that within 1 second, I could be looking at them. Now, I might not be looking at them for several seconds, but at any second, I could be. So I don't ever kneel on the floor with my back to kids behind something, because what they're thinking right now is, and again, these are my kids would have been thinking, it'll take this old man 5 seconds to get up. That gives me plenty of time to punch somebody. So I don't want to give anybody the thought that they might be able to get away with something. I want to give them the thought that they can't, because when they think they can't, they're less likely. When they're less likely, I get to say, wow, I'm really impressed with your self-control today. Well, in reality, their self-control was highly dependent upon my supervision. But really, this is my definition of being a teacher. You play little tricks and set little traps to make kids be successful, and then you give them the credit for it. It's the same thing when we teach reading. We don't get the kid to get it and then go, man, I did a good job of that. You say, wow, you're a great reader. And it's the same thing with behavior. All of these things are just setups to create a success that we give credit for back to the kid, that makes them more likely to keep doing it, and in the long run do it without us. So now let's talk about furniture and seating. First, where should we put the teacher's desk? I don't think it matters, unless you sit at your desk a lot, in which case I would say your desk should be placed in an area where, while you're sitting at it, you can easily see the eyeballs of every kid in the room, and they can see you seeing their eyeballs. What about kids' desks? Well, I'm going to go through several arrangements here in just a second. But first I want to talk about where kids sit. And I will tell you, I am a big fan of assigned seating. Now, I'm not saying you absolutely must assign seating, because clearly that isn't a must. But what I like about assigned seating is when I assign seats, I can control some probabilities. I know some kids will do better sitting here and not there. I know some kids will do better not seated next to one another. The trick is into not letting kids know that you're doing that based upon them. Here's how I do it. I watch my kids for a day or two, and then I put a schematic up on the board of all the seats, and I say, hey, come on in. Take a look up here at the board. Find the desk with your name on it. That's where you're seating. And I apologize for this next part, but I lie to the kids. I say this. This is completely random. Okay, it's not completely random. I thought this out very carefully ahead of time, but I don't want the kids to think that. Now, if I find out I made a bad choice and these two kids shouldn't be sitting next to each other, I try not to change it during class if I can avoid it. And the next day I'll go, you know what? I love making random changes so you get to sit next to different people. I love that. So last night I just flipped a couple of coins and made some random changes. And I moved one of the kids that I wanted to move. I've had kids say, that's weird. The only thing different is he moved over to there. And I go, yeah, I don't know. That's just randomly the way it goes. Now, to keep this going, once in a while, I'll pick out a kid that never does anything wrong and would never be needed to be moved, and I'll move them, because now the kids really believe he just makes random choices. So when I have to move that kid that's really a problem, they might go, why do I have to move? And I go, oh, it's not about you. It's just a random thing I do. And what I've found is, even among my most challenging kids, if they don't believe it was being done to them, but it was just being done randomly, they really don't have a problem with it. Now let's take a look at some arrangements. These are very typical arrangements. This is rows. The yellow stars represent kids with problem behaviors. The T is me, the teacher, and I want to move around the room. So ideally, and this is ideal, it's not realistic all the time, clearly, but I want to move around the room in such a way that I could touch every desk in the room. At the same time, I want to be able to move to my kids with challenges in an efficient manner. Here are two things that people do with challenging kids that don't make sense. One, they think, I'm going to put them as far away as possible. We'll put them way in the corners. These kids need more, not less of our time. Second, they'll say all the kids with problems should be in the front row. One, putting all your kids with problems together, not generally a sound idea. Two, every time you enter the class, they're all to your back. Here's what you do instead. You leave them toward the front, typically, although I'll show you, it can need me in the back, but they are within a straight walk from where you typically stand. I want to see a kid starting to look like they might have some difficulties, and I want to very casually continue talking to the whole class, but walk directly to them and stand near. I don't want to have to serpentine through the class to get to them, so I'm going to put them in a place where I can walk very easily to get to them. So that's how I could make rows work. The long tables are my least favorite classroom to teach in because they're the hardest to move through. So I like to make my lap or move in and talk, and this just doesn't allow it. So I've done this. And by doing this, I give myself a way to walk all the way into the middle of the room and be able to be around as many kids as possible. If I assign seats, notice I can assign a kid with some challenges to be in the very back of the room. But if I'm walking around, I could still have a very few steps to be standing right next to him or her. Next, the groupings of 4. Probably the most popular thing I see at every level of school. Look at all those kids having all those problems together. So number 1, I'm going to assign seats because I have a feeling some of these kids get each other going. So I'm going to be more purposeful in how I assign them. The other thing I like to do is create a circle as much as you can because it's easier to move around. Now look, when I create this circle, I can have kids that I think might need more of me all over the classroom and still be a straight line walk. I can walk through the middle of this circle. I can also walk all the way around the outside once in a while if I want to, but I can also just be at my computer and still talk to kids while I'm walking directly to one kid and not make it obvious that that's what I'm doing. Finally, this is my favorite classroom arrangement. And the reason I like this one so well is because when I'm teaching, I'm not nearly as purposeful as I have been acting like I am. I like to say I make 3 moves through the room where I can touch every kid, and I don't, because once I get busy teaching and I'm talking to kids and doing things, that kind of, I'm moving a lot, but it isn't as thoughtful. And that's what this is. I found in this classroom, I can teach and randomly move around and not have to think about being everywhere. Just let it happen randomly. But no matter where I am, I'm never more than 3 or 4 steps from being able to casually wander right to one of those kids that needs me the most. But not every classroom is set up like this, and not every classroom would necessarily work to be set up like this. This is much better for group work than it is for lecture kinds of things. So again, you've got to kind of make it fit what fits. So when you think about doing things virtually, encourage your parents and your students to create a dedicated space where they go for virtual instruction. It should be at a desk or a table or a place where they always go. It should not be right in front of a TV or near the pets or looking out windows or distractible things. Create a place where it's consistent and they go, and when they're there, they know when I'm here, I'm focused on the computer, the teacher, what we're doing. Encourage students to keep their materials in this place. So we're not every day waiting for them to go around their house and round up all the things. This is where we keep everything that we do when we're doing schoolwork. So think about those basic things as you deal with that. And I'm going to skip ahead here to a video that I want you to see. This is a video of a teacher using something called a group contingency. In a group contingency, what the teacher does is he gives tasks, he or she gives tasks to all the kids in the room, and they all have to do something. And if they all do it, they all get some sort of a reinforcer. Now, what this teacher does is he uses this every day to get kids to do a little review of where we've been. They can do it in partners, but again, it's a class contingency. They all have to do it.
And so you're going to pick an element, and I want you to draw a Lewis dot structure for that element. And as a whole class, once I've discovered and found that 20 of you all have done different correct Lewis dot structures, you'll have a demonstration for you at the end. But we've got to do this before the end of the period. Okay? So when you're ready to be checked, I want you to raise your hand quietly, and I'll come around and check your work. Any questions? Go. Got our first one. We got carbon. I'll create a list up here so you can see which ones. I'm coming to Michael. Show it to me. Very good. We got hydrogen. There's another. So what do you got? Show me. Lewis dot structures. Turn that into a Lewis dot structure. All right, that's number 18. We got fluorine down. We have two more. 2 minutes. Two more. 2 minutes. Preston, what do you got? Lithium. Beautiful. One more. We got 1 minute left. Who's going to be the one that finishes it for us? There's lithium. November, I'm coming for you. What do we got? Perfect. We've got chlorine. That's number 20. And you all, I've got a cool demonstration for you. We're going to look at some flame tests, and it's going to be really awesome because I'm going to make flames, and it's going to turn different colors, and you're going to love it.
Okay, so notice that as the teacher did this, he also moved about the room. He was continually giving them feedback on how they were doing. And this is something he does every day. On this particular day, they knew we were coming in to shoot video of it, so it was a little cornier than normal. But this is a routine. This is something they do on a regular basis. It gets everybody engaged right before class starts. So I'm going to move us now to a different idea. I want to talk about kids that might have more problems or challenge you a bit more, and what some of those strategies could be. And again, let me just reiterate before we start this part that we're talking about kids that have some challenges who need something more than what every other kid in the class needs, but we're still looking at probabilities. So we're still looking at what are the basic steps I should take for the average kid who does these kinds of things. So I thought up two very specific types of kids that I remember very well from teaching. One of them I call the bargainer. So this is a kid that wants to do something but isn't doing what I've asked him or her to do. And when I ask them to do it again, they want a bargain. Okay, I'll do that if, and I say no, and then they say, well, how about this then? And they want to come up with a million different ways they can profit from this bargaining instead of doing what we asked. And a basic response to this is, I would love to help you get that thing you're bargaining for. Here's how you can get it. Do what I asked. So, hey, please do your work. If you'll do this for me, I'll get the work done. It should be other way around. You get the work done, I'll do this for you. So how about if I get half the work done and then you do this? I'll tell you what, first you do the work, then we'll talk about what the bargain is. But it would always be you have to do before I will do. This is something in behaviorism that we call the Premack principle. And it simply means we won't do something in response to a kid bargaining with us until they do something first. It'll be the same kind of idea as if I say, would you please do this? And say, I need to go call my mom, or I need to go sharpen my pencil, or I need to say, okay, as soon as you get this part done, I'll let you do that. But I need to sharpen my pencil now. But all I asked you to do was open your book and read that section. When you show me that you've done that, then you can sharpen your pencil. And so it always becomes, the bargain always becomes, you got to show me first. Always make them show you first. And so what we tried to show in this video is this kid wanting to bargain about getting some work done. And the teacher said, all I need you to do is get your book out, get it open, get this little piece done. And the kid keeps trying to bargain on that. Well, I'll do just this part if you'll do this. Well, if you'll do this, I might do part of that. And what we asked the teacher to do, which I think maybe he doesn't do as quickly as we would like, is we would like the teacher to have said, nope, this is the deal. That's the way it's going to be. And then just walk away. If the kid doesn't do it, they weren't going to do it anyway. Having this long protracted argument isn't going to make it work better. So as you watch this thing, I think maybe the teacher could have stepped away a little sooner.
AJ, let's get that mask on and our book open. Let's get this work finished so we can move on.
I don't have cooties, so I don't need to wear the stupid mask. And she keeps taking hers off.
Well, let's talk about other people later. First, let's get priorities. Mask, pencil, and let's get our book open.
Okay, well, if I know what my grade is, then I can put my mask on and then I can do the work.
Well, we can talk about your grade after we get our priorities straight. Let's get our mask on, our book open, and pencil going.
Well, if I know what my grade is, then I can put the mask on and then I can do the work.
Well, you know the deal. So mask, book, work. I'll be back.
Okay, hey, what if I do one problem now, then we talk about my grade, then I'll put the mask on.
Let's get our mask on first. Book, you know the drill.
Can we talk now?
3 seconds.
There.
Yes, page 78. Good. I'll go check your grade in Infinite Campus while you do the next problem, number 3. I'll be back.
So this is a made up video, and we're kind of trying to get it in a period of time and using real teachers and kids as actors. So a couple of things I probably would have liked to have been different is, one, I think the teacher might have stepped away a little sooner and just made clear, I've already told you what needs to happen. Second, we wanted to show that just because the kid does that doesn't mean the teacher needs to come racing across the room. So he did say, hold on 3 seconds. And it might have been longer than that. And I would have said the teacher at that point could have said, thank you very much. I will go look at your grade as soon as I'm done with what I've got to do here. You keep working. So I'm going to hold up my part of the bargain because you did what I asked you to do. But that doesn't mean I'm beholden to do something for you right this second. So I think that could have been made clearer as this happened. The second kid that I want to talk about is one I'm sure you're all familiar with. And this is the attention seeker. And this is the kid that will just make goofy comments. And honestly, I find these kids humorous. I mean, annoying, but humorous. They really can be kind of funny sometimes. And I wrote this little vignette based on a specific kid that I remember and was thinking about. He really carries this out a long way. And there's probably a point very soon after this where the teacher might have had to make a bigger consequence statement about, okay, you're going to need to make a choice. Either you do this right now or you've chosen this consequence. And he does make those statements, but he makes them fairly mildly. I'm going to show you this video, and then I want to show you what the follow-up is, because this is not the end of it.
Hey, how's this team coming along? Max, what's your role?
I'm not getting close to them. They could be sick.
You're supposed to be the reporter, but you haven't written anything.
Yes, I have. Here's you saying something stupid.
Max, your group just wants to know if you're going to participate to help get the work done.
No, I'm not getting close.
Look, we're 6 feet apart. We all have masks on. We're safe here.
Still too close for me. I'll sit across the room.
You have a choice. You can either take a 0 for the day or help get the work completed. It seems like easy participation grade to me.
All right. But I want to wash the table with disinfectant. Emily's dirty.
He's not going to do it.
Yes, I am. Don't be so serious.
Let's get going then.
I still want to disinfect Emily.
Anyway.
My first notes will be about how this group is dirty. Will that work?
I see a lot of groups getting a lot of great things done.
I'm writing too, but about cooties.
He's writing
You know about cooties?
We have about 15 minutes. Let's get all of our work completed. Get it done.
Okay, so this would be a really challenging kid to have to deal with on a regular basis. So I want to point out a few things. One, the teacher did not let that kid get his emotions going. If you let a kid like that get your emotions going, it reinforces them, and it also reinforces the rest of the class to give that kid a lot of attention. The teacher simply repeats the directions, but remains calm. Facilitate asking the kid to do it, reminding them of the consequences, but you're not going to put a bunch of effort into doing it for them. You just keep reminding them. He remained calm and he followed through. The kid did eventually do what he was supposed to do, even though he continued to talk out. So what I think you have to do is keep your eye on the prize here and say, what do I want? I want that kid to get his work done. I want him to get his work done in a way that allows everyone else to get their work done. And that's right on the borderline here. Both of those things happened, but they were iffy, which is why we need the follow-up. So what the teacher is saying is, I asked you to do something, you did it, but I'd like to talk to you about, and this is really the important part. He's going to say, don't I treat you with respect? Because he didn't yell at the kid. He didn't get harsh. The best thing he could do is walk away and talk to other kids, because this kid gets quieter actually when the teacher's not engaging him. But it allows him to have a real personal conversation as the debrief.
I just want to talk about some of the things that went on earlier. First, thanks for getting the recording done for your group. To not get those easy points for the day would have really been a shame. Okay. Listen, I want to talk about the comments and the hassles and getting started. You know, today it just seemed a little bit off for you, and I really did everything I could to stay calm myself. But this was just not in your normalcy.
I was just joking, messing around.
Well, Max, I understand, and I think you have a great sense of humor. I think you're a great student. I think you know where you're going to go. You know, but it comes across as really disrespectful in front of the other students. It's really hard as that teacher to try to get everybody refocused. And so I try to treat you with as much respect as I can. Do I?
Yeah, I guess.
So I would appreciate it if you could continue in class. You can have your sense of humor, but it needs to be turned off when it needs to be turned off. And there's a time for laughter, and then there's a time for focus. I need you to understand that when a direction has been given, that the comments and the jokes really need to be stopped. And you need to be focused on your schoolwork that is given to you at that moment. Does that make sense? Do you understand where I'm coming from?
Yes.
Now, let's just be real. You know, I really do like you, and I really enjoy having you in class. It really is a lot of fun. So let's continue to move forward.
So this 2 minutes of talk here is probably the most important thing that this teacher could do in order to maintain the relationship with this kid. Because clearly the teacher could have yelled and said, I'm not taking this anymore, and sent the kid out. It's unlikely that this would ever be better under those circumstances. And I'm not at all saying no kid should ever be sent out of the room, because there are obviously times when that has to happen. But if you can find a way to get the kid to do the right thing and then follow up later with a personal conversation, you have a much better probability of making this work in the longer term. So I'm going to sum this all up. One, we, the adults who work with kids in schools, make a big difference. The things we do really make a difference with whether kids are going to be successful or not. Second, everything we do that works is part of instruction. I mean, instruction matters, but how we do it also matters. Some things work better than other things. So we have to think about probability when we pick and choose the things we're going to do and consider whether they're going to work in the longer term. So that's the end of our hour together. I want to again thank the Indiana IEP Resource Center, and please do look at their website. They have some great things there and they do great work. Marcy, We are out of
Yes,
time. I'm happy to stay here and answer questions if somebody has a question.
Well, I appreciate it. Right now, there aren't any questions in the chat box. I will go ahead and just say, if you have any, enter those either in the Q&A and chat now, and Dr. Scott can stay on to answer those. If you need to go, we completely understand. I'm going to go ahead and post in the chat a link to the evaluation for this evening's session. If you could please fill that out for us. Again, I will send a follow-up email with the recording tonight. It will also include the handout, and it will include the book titles that you were asking about earlier. So all of that information will be available to you soon. As soon as we get the recording edited and ready to send out, you'll have all of that information. And we look forward to seeing you again in June. Thanks, Terry, so much for your presentation. And like he said, he will stay on and answer a few questions if you have any. If not, have a great evening, everyone.